Good afternoon, Tom Ginn with G-Force. We will be right back. Well, I tell you what, we won't do the rollout. My screen is going crazy here. I'm really excited today to bring back in our guest that we had scheduled back in March. We ran across a little bit of difficulty keeping a connection, but today we're going to pick up where we left off, less her significant. Today, I'm really excited to get back into the conversation about The Go Giver, the book that Anna and John Mann have created. And without any further ado, I'm just going to bring in Anna.
Hi there. And that would be The Go Giver Marriage, because The Go Giver was written by Bob Berg and John David Mann.
Oh, my apologies.
That's all right. I just want to make sure that none of your audience thinks that John and I wrote The Go Giver.
Right. My apologies, Anna. So it's an honor again to have you back in. For those that may be catching this the second time around, we had a situation no one would ever anticipate. Is we had an internet failure, but it wasn't due to a technology thing. Is we had some sort of animal eat through your cables, and we lost connectivity. Who would ever think that would happen, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Animal attack on the cable.
Well, now you know what you do in your disaster protocols is get some deer repellent spray around the house so you won't have those issues again. So, but I'm excited to have you back on again. What I'd like to do is just share your story about where you are today and what brought you here with regards to the book, The Go Giver Marriage. And I'll let you share why John isn't here today, but it's all yours, Anna.
All righty. John, my husband, John, is a 4-time New York bestselling author and a 5-time national bestselling author. He's written over 30 books. It's approaching 35 now. And he works a lot in co-author relationships, working with people who have brilliant minds and who are thought leaders. And together they shape amazing books, including the first 4 in the series of The Go Giver. The original Go Giver, and then the 3 books that came after that, and now this one, which is called The Go Giver Marriage. The Go Giver Marriage came about because almost 20 years ago, when John printed the original Go Giver off of his laptop, he handed it to me to read, and I read it, and I was like, wow, this book is going to be amazing. It's going to be huge. And I said, this would make an incredible book about marriage. And he said, whoa. And he always wanted to call it The Go Giver's Wife. because I've been a therapist my whole life. And so that's kind of, where it started was, there's psychological underpinnings in The Go Giver that I don't think the reader ever sees or realizes, but they're there because the premise of giving without expectation is something that people aren't accustomed to. People are interested in and have most familiarity with transactional relationships, where I give you something and you give me something back, and I'm expecting that something back. But in a go-giver relationship, you're giving simply for the sake of adding value to the other person's life. And when you add value to the other person's life, like a boomerang, that value comes back to you. And, it's really not new thinking, in the sense that, there's been other theorists that have talked about, enlightened self-interest, if you will, and, having your mind and your heart on adding value to other people's lives as a way of adding value to your own. But in this case, it's what we call the Pindar principle, which is from the original Go Giver. And it's simply the idea that the more you give, the more you have. And when it applies to marriage, it's a tricky one, because people bring to marriages all their material from growing up. And when I say all their material, I mean whatever it was you grew up under. It's all with you, and it's colored the way you enter a relationship, the way you approach a relationship. If you never once saw your parents kiss in the kitchen, then you have a perspective on that kind of closeness. I've met many couples where there's a hands-off policy in public, because they wouldn't think of holding hands in public because it would feel disgraceful to them. But it's simply because of the way they were raised. And by the same token, and this is where we get into deeper problems, I like to say that no one escapes childhood without some wounds.
Right.
And the truth is, some of us had parents that were alcoholics. Some of us had parents that yelled at us. Some of us had parents that were very critical and very brutal. Others had parents that put tremendous pressure on us to succeed. Others had parents that would reject them if they didn't live up to some standard of perfection. And those are all things that color the way you come to a relationship, because you're expecting that. You may not know you're expecting it because it's very unconscious, but you are. So we come into relationships and we have some set ideas about what we want, but mostly we have set ideas about what we want to get.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets tricky, Tom.
Before we get into some principles of the book, and that is that, your why behind writing this book ties with John and taking this, and but in our culture we see a lot of relationships that are not as healthy as that can be. And you mentioned a couple things there, is that we are products of our environment. So we see the relationships, our mom and dad, how they communicated or didn't communicate, and those are just learned behaviors. We don't know anything different. So what are the biggest challenge, you coming from, your background is a professional, is psychotherapy and marriage and all that. What do you see the biggest challenge that couples have in establishing a healthy relationship, from the day they meet to the time they make a supposedly, hopefully, a lifelong commitment? What are some of those things that you've seen, and what you want to do, what this book is intended to do?
Sure. I think the biggest challenge that I see across the board, and I see it in young couples, I see it in older couples, I see it everywhere, is people coming into the marriage with an expectation that the marriage is going to meet their emotional needs. And that you're looking to the relationship to somehow entertain you, romanticize you, treat you the way you've always dreamed of being treated. You're looking, you have high expectations for what the marriage is going to give to you. And I think that starts with the wrong premise, because the only person that can impact the marriage is you. And so the behavior that you bring to the marriage is what will reflect on how the marriage comes back to you. And so people have it backwards often. They're often in there looking, I meet women and men who have their arms folded, and they're like, well, he never gives anything to me. He's not generous. He doesn't tell me I look good. He doesn't talk to me in a nice way. He's curt. He asks me if we need milk, in the sense of, the conversations become pedestrian. There's not that sense of romance that they felt in the beginning. Well, first off, I think that that sense of romance is lovely, but it's never real. It's that spark you feel in the very beginning when you're first attracted to somebody. It's not based in reality. And for every couple on earth, it dies and goes away. And then you're face to face with, who are you really as a person? What are you giving to the relationship? And what is the other person giving back?
Yeah. I look back, I share this real briefly. I'm in my second marriage for 33 years, 34 years. I better get that right in case when my wife sees this. But I look at, after looking at the book and how I made my decisions in that first relationship, I wish this book was out there in the beginning, but life teaches us lessons, and just make the best that you can today and move forward with growth. But I'm really excited to find out. I've been into the book. I love the writing, how you and John have put this together. It's genius, I would say. It's a
Thank
deep,
you.
it's an easy read, but it's a deep read when you really look and embrace the words that you have, because words have power. And you've done a wonderful job. I just want to let you know. But we could talk all day about all the principles in the book and that. But I would like to start. I was reading in the book. At the end of the book, you sort of encapsulated that love is a verb, and that there's 5 lasting secrets to love. So we have 5 of them. I'll just bring them up real quick, and I'm gonna, you'll identify which ones you want to talk about, and we can have some dialogue. One is appreciating, attending, allowing, believing, and growing. And when I read all these things, I got a much deeper meaning of these words. And where would you like to start, Anna?
First off, I would start by saying that not only love is a verb, but love is something that if you want to keep it alive, you have to give it attention every day. It's kind of like learning how to water the plants. If you don't water them, they clearly die. And if you don't give them some fertilizer, at least every 6 months to a year, they really don't do well. So it's really about, intending and being intentional in your relationship. So it's what I call leadership in love, because leadership in the family means that you're taking personal responsibility for bringing a higher level of communication and care to that relationship. And that's, we put so much energy into leadership in the world. Like, are you a leader at work? Are you a leader as the head of your company? What are the ways that you're expressing and showing leadership in your career? But we don't ever talk about it in relation to family or being a leader to your children if you're a parent. Leadership is extremely important at home because it's about being proactive and intentional. So I like to start with the first secret, which is the secret to appreciate. And the reason I start there is that I'll start by saying the book is divided. The book is an easy read in an hour and a half. And it's divided into 2 halves. The first half is a parable. And the parable, which I think is John's most brilliant parable to date, was written by my husband, John, and he's really an exquisite writer. The second half of the book, which unpacks the secrets delivered in the story, and it goes one by one through the 5 secrets. And it shares not only client stories from clients that were generous enough to allow me to share their stories in the book, but it talks about the specifics of how to put these 5 secrets into action in your life. And I've had a number of people that read the book and said, wow, the second half just blew my mind, because then I understood, okay, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to put it to work? So the first thing that we explain in that second half is that the 5 secrets come from a theory in psychology called developmental theory. And in essence, what developmental theory is this: what you needed as a baby and as a child, as you were growing up, you still need now. And that very, very vulnerable child that existed when you were young is still alive and well inside of you today. And you still get your feelings hurt, and you still feel slighted, and you still have those moments where you didn't get attention and you wanted some. Those are all very normal reactions, because we are the same people inside, and we still have those same needs. And so the secrets are based on those needs. And that's why they're so significant and why they're so powerful. When you're a child, if you have a parent who adores you and who lets you know regularly how much you're doing a good job as a child, it boosts your self-confidence, it boosts your esteem, it makes you feel 10 feet tall. When you have a parent that says, look at you read that book all by yourself, you're kind of like pumped up going, yeah, I did. And those are the kinds of things that as a child you needed, but as an adult, it's a much more authentic, much more adult kind of appreciation that you need. And so when you make the effort to appreciate your partner, it isn't a passing compliment. And I don't want to diss a compliment, because a compliment is a lovely thing. Everybody loves to be told that they look nice or that they're, sweet or things of that sort. But when you take the time to appreciate your partner, pick something that's very specific. I'll give you an example. I was with a group of lawyers this morning, and one of them said, my entire business wouldn't stay afloat without my wife. She's the general administrator of my practice. And I literally couldn't run without her. And, our question was, well, have you told her that? And he said, well, I think she knows that, but the truth is she might know it. She might know that she's running your life, but you sharing gratitude and appreciation for that, that's power, because that really lets her know that this is not something you take for granted and that you get it, that you couldn't run without her. So that's the way that we like to frame it, is that you're doing something specific. I have a client who had trouble thinking of things. And at the same time, he realized that his wife made homemade salad dressings and he never really liked salad until he ate her salad. It was because she makes these really good dressings. And he started to love salad. And then he said, man, she put buffalo chicken in it and she'd add this and she'd add that. And I'd be like, yeah, let's eat salad. And so one day when she was making a dressing, he said, I never tell you this, but I love your cooking, number one, but I hated salad. And now I love salad. And it's all because of you and because of the way you make these amazing dressings. And he said she just about fell off her stool at the kitchen counter. She was so happy because it just made her really feel good that he got it, that she does this to spoil him. And she does this because she wants him to be healthy. So just taking the time to share those things that are real, that are authentic, that your partner does. Maybe you have a partner who you never even have to think about changing the sheets on the bed or, things like that. It's like, it's really nice to get into a clean bed every week, but somebody has to do that laundry. Somebody has to catch it up, so taking the time to thank people for things. I often tell women, when was the last time you thanked your husband for taking the trash out? And they're like, never, and we always laugh about it because it's like, it's really nice that he does it. And yeah, wouldn't you hate it if he wasn't there and you had to do it?
Yeah, and that sort of comes to what I would say a lot of times we have expectations. That's a he or she job or that person's job. So there's no need to expound on it and all that. But I love the word appreciating because I think it's a deeper meaning in the area. If you look at gratitude, appreciation is one of those areas that gratitude, we got to go deeper to really appreciate what we have, whether it be physical or whether it be in relationship. But appreciation is such from an authentic place with a deep meaning to it, not just, hey, well, thanks, you did a really good job of cleaning the kitchen yesterday for me, but why, what it really means to you emotionally and those type of things is what I'm catching from you here. So
totally. And that's really the bottom line, because when people feel that in your heart, the thank you is coming from a place of, I really appreciate that you take care of these things, because my day runs like a freight train some days and I take it for granted and I don't want to take it for granted because I really so appreciate what you do for me. Yeah, it's powerful. And also, if you take the time to make a list, like a gratitude list of all the things you're grateful for with your partner. One of my clients recently went to his wife, who he's been married to for 40 years. And he was telling me, he's in the middle of a session, he goes, oh, my wife's a fox. I said, well, what does that mean to you? And he goes, well, she never let herself go. She has a beautiful figure and she's a really pretty, he said, yeah, we're in our 50s, but she's really attractive. And I said, do you tell her that? And he goes, oh no, she knows I'm attracted to her. I chase her around the house all the time. And I'm like, no. Chasing her around the house is one way of letting her know. But I do tell her when she's, do you let her know that you have friends whose wives have put 40 pounds on since they got married and who they don't feel as attracted to? Maybe they would never say that, but they still don't. Have you let her know how much that means to you? And so he started telling her, like really in detail, letting her know all the ways that he found her beautiful. And he said it was like a whole new lesson in life. He said she just started blushing and flowering and being really happy. And he said it meant so much to her. And he said, she finally admitted to me. He said she broke down one day and she kind of let some tears come up. And she admitted to me that after 50, she was feeling really unattractive because her face was starting to have wrinkles. And he said, oh my goodness, I don't even see them. She's so beautiful. So there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. It's the little things, because we look at ourselves and we're critics ourselves, and when we hear that the wrinkles don't matter,
They don't.
it's the wrinkles don't matter. So
Yep.
that touches me with a story with my wife. I won't get into that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And
So,
I'll give you another level of it. I had another client that was a guy. I see a lot of high power, type A, very successful guys in my practice, and they're really successful in their work, but sometimes their relationships are kind of a little bit in the back seat. But they're sincere. These are smart people. They're sincere in their desire to make their relationship better. So I was with this one guy, and he said, I'm grateful that my wife is like still very, very interested in hopping in the sack. And again, an older couple, but he said, I have a lot of friends where that portion of their life is sort of gone to sleep. And he said, ours is not only alive and well, but he said, my wife is just so wonderful and so generous. And so we have such a good time together. I said, do you tell her that? So it was like that same thing, how do you express that to her? He wasn't. He was just enjoying it. He was just commenting on it because he was with me. And in a coaching relationship. So he took it to a whole nother level. I mean, he actually went out and bought her things. He did all kinds of gifting and appreciating in different ways. He actually told her in very many ways how much he appreciated that she made this a priority. And you know what she said to him? She actually was so grateful. And she said, it's not something I do just to keep you home or just to keep you happy. She said, I do it because I love you and because it's so fantastic to be with you in that way. But you telling me how much you enjoy that and how much you enjoy that I make space for it and that I initiate and that, really means so much to me. So it took their relationship to a much deeper level. He said they started going for long walks, holding hands. He said everything about their relationship got more romantic and it felt a lot more like the early days.
Well, that's a great story that you shared there. That's, it's just an affirmation that going back to what our real needs are, is my wife's a beautiful one that's taught me this is, do you see me? Do you hear me? And do you really care? And I think that's a Maslow principle, one of our hierarchy of needs. But, it's really when we can be in presence with people at that space. My wife is wonderful. She's taught me so much. I got a long ways to go, but that example and that need, when we're together and we're talking, she's with me. I mean, it's not like she's off thinking about doing whatever. So it means a lot in that. So
I love hearing you talk about that. And I'll tell you why. And I want to say this specifically to women that are listening to this podcast. 95 to 97% of men are 100% loyal to the women they love. And especially if that woman gives him some of what he needs. Because men are more willing to please than anything if it's going to return to them a sense of being cared about, loved, and having what I call a safe harbor. So what you're describing is your wife is very wise. Your wife really appreciates and understands you. And you saying, I have a lot to learn, that's my interpretation of what I love about men the most, is that, the so-called Labrador retriever side of men, where they're like, yeah, okay, I'll run for the ball. I mean, they're willing to please. And I really always want women to really remember that, because a lot of men and a lot of relationships can be preserved when women really stay in their wisdom of understanding that men really do want to please.
Yeah. My wife calls that knowing her love language and knowing my love language.
Yes.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm a believer that we all need all 5 of the love languages. I'm not a believer that there's a single one that really matters to you. But I also know people have a dominance in one area or the other. But let me tell you, appreciate being the first secret. It's one of the most powerful of the 5, because being appreciated is about being witnessed, being seen and heard and understood, and loved. And so when you appreciate your partner, oof, it's gold.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So,
what would the next of these 5, which,
yep.
they all have very strong importance, but what would be the next one you want to?
I want to talk about allow, because it's the one that's the most difficult to understand.
Okay.
Okay. Allow is the one that people get confused over, because they're like, what do you mean? Am I allowing just allow? Because it's not allowing, it's to allow. So what you're allowing for is not someone's bad behavior. You're not allowing someone to just trample over you, or to, speak rudely, so allow has nothing to do with the way the word gets interpreted by people sometimes. That when you're allowing, it means you're kind of letting things just run wild. Allow is the secret that is the most difficult to understand, because it's the secret that shows up during for better or for worse. And it is the worst side. It is in sickness and in health. It shows up during sickness, and it is in richer or for poorer. It shows up when you're struggling and you are poor. And the reason why allow is so powerful is that marriage is never fair. There will be seasons that are joyful, and there will be seasons that are difficult. There will be miscarriages, trials and tribulations with your children, financial ups and financial downs. There will be times when one of you or the other of you is either sick, or has to go through surgery, or has something going on that you're going to have to pick up the slack for. And that's what allowing is all about. And I'll give you a really concrete example. I broke my leg in a compound fracture that had over 30 breaks. And it was so bad, my leg had to be pinned back together. And it took multiple surgeries to just get the bones in the right place so that it could heal. But then so between all of that, the surgeries and everything else, I didn't walk for a year and a half. I went from being somebody who used to jog 5 miles a day, and who did all the shopping, a lot of the cooking, and did a lot of the running around in the errands for the household. And I quickly became a person who couldn't get a glass of water or a cup of coffee across the room. Because when you're on crutches, you can't carry something.
Right.
So, I had a makeshift bag that I wore over my head that I kept my phone and a pad of paper in and pencils in. But, I couldn't get anything across the room. And the leg was, it was actually my knee that had fractured, and they never cast the knee. So when you have 30 breaks and there's no cast, the pain is excruciating. So for the first 3 months, I pretty much sat still on a bed with my legs straight out. So John instantly had to do the shopping. He had to do the cooking, and he had to bring and deliver the meals. He had to bring me tea or coffee or anything I was drinking. I mean, it was like John simply became my manservant, and it went on for a really long time. So that's what allow is about. That wasn't fair to John, but it wasn't something I did on purpose. And it was one of those moments where, are you going to attend to and take care of your spouse, or are you going to grumble through the entire experience? And what a lot of people will do, thanks very much, Ted. What a lot of people will do is they'll do the things, but they'll be grumbling the whole time. Like, I wish this could heal faster. I don't have time to make dinner tonight. I'm going to get us takeout. Well, I'm sure she or he would be grateful for takeout. What they're grateful for is that you brought them something to eat. So, yeah, there's going to be moments when you have to pick up the slack. Last year, John had a double hernia surgery, and man, I took over everything for quite a long time. So it's that kind of stuff where you're going to have to allow for the ups and the downs. You're going to allow, if you have to stop spending money flat out because one of your spouse lost their job and your income just went down by half, then you're not going to buy a single thing that's not necessary, because that's what you need to do to allow to get through this period of time. Yeah. So that's what allowing is really about. And if you're good at it, you never make your partner feel bad, no matter which side the crisis is on. You're always there for your partner. You're taking care of them in every possible way you can and allowing for the shifts. And the same goes for like a miscarriage. Like sometimes people will have a miscarriage and, a month later, he's ready to start trying again, but she's still like grieving. She's still, feels like her body failed her and she's scared and she doesn't know if she wants to, go there right away. So, sometimes you just have to allow for the fact that your partner's not going to be in the same place you are, but you still have to make things work.
I'm just taking notes as I go through here. But you said to allowing, allow could have, there's power differentials between how you use setting up. My wife talks about boundaries. How does a couple, I respect my wife's boundaries. She respects mine, and we have common boundaries as well. And how does a couple allow somebody to work within those boundaries? I don't know if I'm being clear on the question, but because like you say, allowing somebody could be a power differential and it may not be a healthy thing. But how does a couple set up boundaries? What would you recommend?
I think boundaries are something that should get discussed. And I always tell people, if you're not married yet, get into premarital counseling and talk about boundaries. Talk about money boundaries, because I'll tell you, one of the things about money is that it's really important that you agree upon the boundaries of spending it. Because, I have known women that would go on shopping trips and then they would hide things in the back of a walk-in closet, and they would slowly bring things out because they didn't want him to know. And they had their own credit cards, but at the same time, it was like, it's still money coming out of the central pot of the family. And, it's really important to be very straight and above board about those kinds of boundaries, and to know where you're both at, what your long-term goals are, things of that sort. I'm a big believer that money should be a real out on the table discussion, so that there's boundaries. And there's also, should we do this or not? Should we wait? That kind of question of like, is this the right timing for us to spend this money on this, or to go into this mortgage, or, anything that's going to demand extra attention or extra work on either spouse's part. You really need to discuss those things. Those need to be joint decisions. And that's part of the boundary, is agreeing to have certain areas that are joint in their discussion and in their decision making. Same with kids. I've seen it in a lot of marriages that have split. Co-parenting is a powerful and important thing. The boundaries need to be established that one of you is not going to take one of your kids off on a vacation without discussing it with the other parent, so that there's some sense of boundaries around what's going to happen, so you don't get thrown off the cliff and feel disregarded. So that's, inside of allowing, it's certainly one of those things that you have to be willing. I think a big central part of allowing is also sitting down and having conversations, so that there's clear communication. And one of our real goals for conversation is that it doesn't heat up to the place where one or the other of you feels flooded or feels intimidated, or where it's starting to heat into an argument. I think that in the moments where a discussion is starting to head toward an argument, it's important to call a timeout and say, okay, let's just put a hold on this right now. Let's not turn this into a major argument. Let's go take a walk. Let's not argue. Let's kiss and make up for the moment and take a walk. Let's sleep on this. Let's come back to it tomorrow. I'll write you an email with some of my thoughts, just because I don't think on my feet. I think it's really important for men and women who don't think on their feet, and who sometimes in the middle of a heated conversation will start to feel overwhelmed,
Yeah.
to be able to say, let's table this for now. I'll write some thoughts to you on email and we'll come back to this conversation tomorrow. If it's truly a hot conversation, I think that another way to establish boundaries is to get a third party, either a coach or a therapist, into the conversation, just so that you can, even for 1 or 2 sessions, just mediate that conversation, because that's a great way to work with a counselor that isn't about there's something wrong with us.
Right. And that's a great point. Having counseling or coaching or whatever, a lot of times people think I'm getting marriage counseling. It's negative. It can be, it should be, it's a growth experience. And how can we grow together and get through what life challenges that gives us, and how do we mediate and come to common ground? There's common ground in everything, right? So
not only that, but I'll tell you, I've had clients where I saw the husband and I saw the wife separately, but I didn't work with them together because I had been in individual work with both of them. So when it came time for them to do some couples work together, I referred them out. And so that's the other thing, recognize that there's a time and place for real therapy. And that's also allowing, because I want to say, if your partner ever comes to you and says, I feel we need to go to a counselor, the answer to your thing is yes. Your answer has to be yes. And the reason is that, a lot of times when people say we need to go to a counselor, they're kind of in a deal breaker moment. And the question is, do you want to be in the deal breaker moment, or would you rather see a counselor? Because a lot of times a counselor can really quickly unwind what's happening. And it really doesn't have to be a long and drawn out thing. And it doesn't have to mean you're on the cliff of breaking up.
Yeah. Great points you're bringing up.
I'm going to go for another secret, if you will.
Go ahead.
Which we have time for one more. I'm going to go to grow.
Grow.
Now, grow is the 5th secret. And in all the Go-Giver books, and this is the brilliance of John and Bob, is that the first 4 secrets of the Go-Giver are about giving to your client, giving to the people that you network with in business, just always giving in the relationship. The 5th secret is about receiving. The 5th secret in the original Go-Giver is the law of receptivity. It's the idea that you cannot give from an empty wagon, and you need to be able to receive in order to complete the circle of giving. Because when you give, there's going to be people that come back at you and they're like, I so appreciate that you did this for us. I'm sending you this client and I just want to thank you so much. And it's like, if you can't receive, then you're not even going to know what to say, let alone to be gracious about the fact that they referred a client to you. So in the Go-Giver marriage, the first 4 secrets are all ways that you're going to give to the relationship. And I used to say give to your partner, but it's really giving to the relationship, because when you're feeding the relationship, you're feeding the us. And the us is the third entity in the room. There's you and there's me, and then there's the us. And the us is the we, the part of you that got together originally and said, let's get married, or let's be a couple. And that's the part you want to really spend time to preserve and give energy to. So giving all that juice in the first 4 secrets to your spouse and to the relationship is powerful, and the relationship will really go somewhere from doing it. But the most common mistake that people make in a marriage or in any relationship that's long-term is they fall into codependent behaviors where they want the relationship to give them the juice that they're desiring. They want the relationship to feed them and take care of their needs. And so they stop seeking new avenues of growth. And I see it a lot with women who have devoted themselves to the children, to being a great homemaker and raising the children. And so in a sense, the marriage became like not a contract, because they might have still had intimacy. There might have been lots of ways that they were a couple, but there was so much focus on her part on the children that when the children leave the nest, she is lost. she is like, whoa, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I am. I don't know who I am because I don't have a job anymore.
I would just say that's a loss. They grieve.
Yes,
It's a
it
loss.
is.
Yeah.
It is. It's a huge loss. And at the same time, though, if this same mother had kept other things that she was doing where she was always learning and growing, and she had other activities and she had a well-developed social life, maybe she had a women's group she was part of, then this would feel like a transition, and she might need to get with her women's group and talk about it, and she might even cry about it because it's a transition when your kids move out. But there's a whole new life for just you and your husband. I mean, John and I, we're like kids under the roof. You know? We're like so happy. I mean, we have 5 kids and they're all adults. They're all on their own now. We had a few who moved back home for short periods of time, and we definitely went with that. But at the same time, when the last one moved out, we were like, okay, that's it. We're not letting anybody else move home. Because we realized that there's real power in having the only decision about dinner be, between the two of you. And you're not running people to soccer meets or to outside activities. Life gets just simpler. And so I want to see women be able to have enough going on in their life that the kids aren't their life. And that there's more facets to their life than just that. And the same with men, that it isn't just their job, because I've seen the same thing happen with men where they hit 52 and their company downsizes them. And all of a sudden, there they are at 53 years old, going out looking for a new job, feeling like a lost pup. They don't have a resume made. They've been in the same job for 20 plus years, and they are lost because they didn't develop other skills. They didn't keep a social network going that would allow them to have referrals. They didn't have enough networked friends in their business circles to have people say, oh, Tom, you're not working there anymore? Oh my goodness, I know 3 different places that will want you. And then all of a sudden, boom, you've got new interviews and things happening. That's what I mean. It's like, don't keep all your eggs in one basket around your relationship. Don't expect the relationship to feed you, and don't expect your current job to be the only thing you're ever going to do. Most people actually change jobs or change careers 3 to 5 times in their adult life. And it's really important to stay flexible so that you yourself are growing.
Yeah. And I think what you said there, when the wife and the children and the husband losing their job, is there's a lot of things that affect them on an emotional level. Self-image gets challenged, their belief in themselves, all those things come into play, and being there for them to let them feel comfortable expressing that hurt, and
Exactly.
they're and express themselves. Maybe they don't believe in themselves anymore, but I've done this, now what do I do? Those type of things. So just having that conversation of being there as support, I
Yep.
think is so important.
Yep. And I'll tell you, there's a story in the book about a guy that ended up going on blood pressure medicine. And when he got on blood pressure medicine, he no longer was able to perform in the bedroom in the same way because the medicine affected him. And he had a really wise wife. And I share this story simply because I like to share this story simply because I think a lot of men feel shame if they ever need any kind of enhancement. And the truth is, Viagra and all the drugs that are enhancement drugs, they were all created to open up the vessels for blood pressure issues. They had nothing to do with sexuality. But the truth is, there's no shame, no matter what age you are, in having things like that around, because it just enables you to have a normal life. It's like if you were depressed, wouldn't you take an antidepressant just so you could feel normal? So normal is normal. Doesn't matter what corner it falls in. So I love to share that story because we put it into the book, and people bring it up often when they talk about the book to us. They're like, "Wow, we were surprised that story was there." But it's another example of allowing yourself to, and allowing for your partner to have to take a medication, or for things to be shifting as you're changing and growing.
I've seen this, in my background and things that I've done, and I've seen relationship things. I was a financial coach, so I saw the that conflict and those issues manifest in many different ways. And I was going to go with this is just a lot of people are threatened by somebody else's growth. That
Yes.
if I grow, they may not value me anymore, or they will look at that relationship totally. So they want to hold on. Let's keep it as is. I don't want to see you grow because I'm holding on to my security in my relationship. Do you see that at all? And
I do. I actually had a man once say to me that when his wife started a podcast, and she was a very vivacious personality. She quickly had a following, and she was getting all these very interesting guests, and her success was starting to take off. And he was very intimidated by it. And all of a sudden, she was getting consulting jobs, and she was starting to maybe have to take off for 3 days to go consult to a company. And her career was growing, and he wanted to put a halt on it because he didn't want her to leave. And he didn't, because he wanted the household to just run with her heading it up. And the second was that he was intimidated by her success because he was feeling flatlined in his own career. And the beauty of the situation was that he really woke up to the fact that he should be applauding that his wife was starting to really have all this success. Number one, their income went up because of her. And number two, it gave him a little more freedom to start taking a course on the side and expanding his horizons. He was able to develop a whole new niche that he could consult to because his wife was carrying a little more financial load because her business was taking off. And it took him about 6 months to get over the part of him that felt like he wasn't as much of a man as he felt like he should be. And then when he finally started to move into this new niche and he was starting to kind of gain some new skills, he was growing, in fact. He had to acknowledge it. He was like, you're right. I needed to grow. And I just was like, I was trying to stop her from growing because I wasn't growing.
Yeah.
That was a great moment.
Yeah. I see where growing is a positive on an individual basis. How do you grow together, supporting each person's growth, their desires to become better, or whatever that is, because you can put 10,000 things under the is, but just supporting each other to be just better people for themselves and fill those needs. We all have different needs that we want to fill. And it's okay if I have to seek, I'm not talking seeking out somebody's guidance, wisdom to grow. That's a positive thing. So
exactly.
Yeah, so growing, I've seen it where people have wanted to hold the other person down for their own agenda, whatever you want to call that. So
their own fear, usually.
Yeah.
But you're right. And I'm so glad you raised that because I see it happen in a lot of couples where one person's trying to hold the other one down because they're intimidated by their growth. And it's really all about their own stagnation that the intimidation is there. And it's funny because, I do relationship coaching, but I'm really a life coach who focuses on relationships. But that also means I focus on people's lives. And I've had many clients where we really did a lot of work on a life coaching sort of perspective of like, what is it that lights you up? What is it you want to do? Because a lot of times people don't spend the time daydreaming about what they're interested in. And when they kind of hit on it, it's always interesting to see, it's like, oh, well, I want to be an artist, but I want to make money as an artist. Well, there's a goal for you. I mean, that's something you can accomplish in today's economy with the web and websites and the ability to post online. I mean, it's really possible to become very successful.
Yeah. So, wow. I know we've got these. I can just see how everything just meshes together. And what I also get out of this book, I think just the principles here applying would apply in all relationships to one degree or another. It's not just about the marriage relationship, because we're all human beings, and we have to interact. And how do we do that more effectively? And your principles in this book are not just for the marriage, from my interpretation, how I view it. So
I think that it's great that you brought that up, Tom, primarily because John and I were just on a mastermind this morning with hundreds of people. And we were brought in to talk about the 5 secrets and about the Go-Giver marriage. And these are all professionals. And we spent a better part of an hour talking about why these 5 secrets apply to professional relationships across the board, and how they apply to parenting relationships. They apply to relating to your parents, yourself, or to your siblings, to your coworkers, to people you employ. I mean, it's across the board. Everybody likes to be appreciated. Everybody needs opportunities to grow.
wonderful. This has been delightful. And I highly recommend everybody that's out there watching, tag and share your friends. We do have a comment coming up here. Just see. Thanks, Ted. Appreciate you coming on. He's got a great story too. So I know Ted personally, but thanks for coming on. Just tag and share with us. You know, I always believe that, when we have something of value, we should share it. And how a person receives it's not really our responsibility. I believe we're just dropping a pebble into the water, and we'll get a ripple effect out there, or the butterfly effect. So share this out, because there's somebody out there that's struggling in relationship, and they're not aware that there's answers, and they're frustrated, they're hurt, they're struggling. So if you know anybody out there, just point them to this website and introduce the book, because it could be the difference in a relationship saver. So that's what my recommendation to my audience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tom. This has been lovely.
Wonderful. Hey, do you have a parting thought that you want to leave with the audience?
My parting thought is this: love is a practice. It's like, if you're going to become a great musician, you have to practice. If you're going to be a fantastic athlete, you have to practice. If you're going to be really good at sales, you have to practice. It really doesn't matter what your skill is, but if you want your marriage to be happy, or your relationship to be happy, you have to practice. And don't be afraid. You're going to stumble. You'll make mistakes. That's part of the game. But just know that the 5 secrets will guide you if you use them. And I also just want to say thank you for supporting us. The book is moving well, and we're just so thrilled that people are really resonating with the message. So thank you so much.
Well, it's an honor to share this, to get to know you and John, and you guys are doing fabulous things. Everybody should be reading this book, married or not married. So with that, I'm going to put you in the back room. Enjoy the M&Ms that I left you for the green room, and we'll wrap up here.
All righty.
Again, thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
That's what G-Force is: gratitude, appreciation. I believe it's sort of the foundation of when we're dealing with all the positive things that go in our lives, also the negatives. It brings us into a place that we can, through gratitude, have ourselves be able to regroup and respond versus react. So I really appreciate Anna coming in. I would sure like to have a conversation with John as well, but other commitments got in the way. But take some time. The information there about the book, I encourage everybody out there to check it out. With that all said, everybody have a great day, and we'll catch you on the turn.